Good afternoon, Cherries fans, and welcome back to Cherry Picking. Of course, we've had the international break. We are back to Premier League action. Before I do welcome my regular twosome, here's a little bit about my sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out a little bit more about what Dental on the Banks can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. So, the regular is back on the show. It is a pleasure to welcome back Matt Harrison. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, all good, Craig. Ready and
Excellent.
waiting for this weekend's Premier League action.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. I'm trying to count. We are going to be talking about your shirts at one point. So everybody hit that subscribe and that bell button because that is coming. That's going to be a real special series of shows. But I'm trying to count how many shirts. One, two, three, four. I
Only the
think there's
four. Only the four.
only the four. There's not
Only
one hiding behind you. And of course, you got one on from last season, the promotion shirt from last season. So, yeah, only the four today. Hang on. No.
There are
One,
six, I think.
one,
I see
two,
six.
three, four, five. There's one in the frame. And of
Oh
course,
yeah.
the one you got on, there you go, six.
Oh,
There
six.
is six. There is six. But um, Matt has got a lot more. Please do guess how many Matt has actually got. Um, it's probably getting close to the hundreds. And of course, we have got the main man down below us as well. Here is Manny. How you doing, Manny?
All good, mate. All good. I had to take some proper preparations for this one today because I do not want to have my choppy internet connection causing a problem. Always happy to be a part of this. Cherry picking is always relaxing, great deal of fun. Good to be a part of this, and we've got a lot to discuss. So I am ready to sink my teeth into it.
Excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, I think before we get started, I know that it was a week or so ago, but of course, we had that Villa game, we had the watch along, and we were all buzzing off the back of that result against Liverpool, and it was a bit of a flat squib, wasn't it? But, did we really play as badly as some people were making out?
Definitely wasn't one of our best performances, but then I've seen us play worse. So, yeah, it was a little bit disappointing, wasn't it? To
Yeah,
concede as early as we did. I don't think that helped, obviously, and I think that was a real disappointment for us, especially after that win the week before. But again, look at the league table, look at who's coming up. There's winnable games still,
yeah,
and it's going to be a very, 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 very tight race to the end of the season.
yeah, definitely. And personally, from that Villa game, it was disappointing to concede so early, but we've got to give Aston Villa credit for what they did do. Secondly, though, is although it was great to see him back, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see David Brooks get a run out on Saturday against Fulham, because I'm sure the reception will be even wilder than it was at Villa Park. It was kind of the wrong move at that point in the game, and I know that's horrible to say. That's horrible to say after what David's been through, but taking off Adam Smith to put on David Brooks was the wrong decision at that point. The whole shape of the squad was kind of lost a little bit, whereas Dongo was definitely feeling it at that point. Maybe David Brooks coming off and Dongo coming on would have been a more sensible substitution. What do you make of that, Manny? Do you feel that Brooks, it was great to see him back, but do you feel that the actual player that he come on for was the wrong decision?
I think you said it perfectly, Craig. It was, a poor decision, and I'm all for sentimental substitutions. They've been made before, and if there's a reason behind them, and it's the right thing to do, then by all means do it. But bringing off Smith for Brooks was definitely not the best decision. Ideally, if you want to do that, then you also have to do there has to be part of a double substitution where you bring off another midfielder and bring on the defender there. So I really don't know what Gary O'Neill was thinking. I take the point that Smith might have looked a little bit tired, perhaps, but again, if you have a situation where both Smith and Dango were sort of feeling the effects, you bring on Brooks and you bring on someone else at the same time, and that's just one of the simple, basic things that you can sort of do. I think maybe in a way, if memory serves me right, Bournemouth were only 1-0 down at the time. So he probably thought that taking off a defender and bringing on an extra midfielder would have probably added a little bit more to the attacking shape, perhaps, and possibly tried to, get at the Aston Villa midfield.
Yeah.
But then you run a risk by doing that, because obviously that leaves the defence a lot more open, as it were. And of course, once you see the complete highlights of that game, you take a look and see why Neto, despite my being critical of him for letting in at least one of the 3 goals, he actually made some really, really big saves as well to keep the scoreline down. So you could see that when you make such a high risk substitution in that regard, you have to be prepared to accept the risks and also try and make sure you get those rewards, and that's always a problem. So he should have made a double substitution and brought Brooks and another defender on for Smith and Otara, and had he done that, it would have been a lot better.
Yep, definitely. Of course, we've had the international break, and I think we'll cover off that first before we go on to Fulham. By all means, please do check out our recent interview for ahead of the Fulham game with Jack from Fulhamish, which is the top Fulham podcast on the internet. So do check that out. But let's start off with, of course, the international break. England did pretty well. To be honest, all the Cherries involved did pretty well during this international break. But let's start off with England and, of course, this man, Harry Kane. So, of course, England's all-time record goal scorer, 82 caps, 55 goals. That's going to take some beating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's only 29, Harry Kane.
Yep.
So he's got another couple of tournaments in him, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And he is just a natural goal scorer, isn't he? How far can he go in terms of goal scoring for England? He's, I would say, easily got another 20 goals in him, if not maybe more. So, I think he's going to set a record that will take a lot longer to be broken than Rooney's record anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, it's interesting when you look at the the 3 leading goal scorers for England, and there's some stats there for their appearances and their goal records. So, I mean, look at Bobby Charlton, for example. Bobby Charlton was a midfielder, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
106 caps, and he had a ratio of 0.46 goals a game, which is slightly better ratio than Mr. Rooney's. So it's just quite an interesting comparison. 3 totally different style of players there that have all had the honour of being England's all-time leading goal scorer.
And to be honest, it's quite impressive, what he has done in a short space of time. I remember, when he was at Norwich, wasn't he, on loan, and also he was at Leicester. I think wasn't he on loan at Millwall as well?
Wasn't it Leighton Orient?
Leighton Orient. I think he went to Millwall as well.
He may well have done it. He had quite a few loan spells because I believe when who was manager at Spurs, I think it was Tim Sherwood that was manager at Spurs.
Yeah.
And I think they had a £600,000 offer for Harry Kane from Norwich, I believe. Which obviously they turned down in the end. But apparently Daniel Levy was considering the offer.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely did his journey a little bit when he was in his younger days. I got a funny feeling he was on the bench for Leicester at Bournemouth at one time, if memory serves me right.
Yes, yeah, he was. So yeah, we named the 4 teams that, of course, he was on loan with. But ever since 2013, he's been 2014. He's been pretty much ever present in that Tottenham side, and 204 goals, 307 appearances is quite remarkable. An interesting fact as well about Harry Kane is, I'll throw this out there and see if either of you can guess it, but he was actually turned down by a club prior to him ending up at Spurs.
Arsenal.
Do you know which club? Yep, Arsenal. And Arsene Wenger was very, very disappointed by that.
I bet Manny's kicking himself, eh?
Not really, because if you remember correctly, I mean, that was, of course, a period at Arsenal when, it was 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
He was, of course, with our youth team at that time. We had a certain Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, who were in the first team. And, of course, after leaving Arsenal, he had his youth spells back at Ridgeway Rovers, and then Watford for a bit of time, and then was in the Tottenham Hotspur youth team for 5 years, from 2004 to 2009. Of course, within that interim period, Thierry Henry left our club, but then we had the likes of Robin van Persie and Alexis Sanchez. So I think the reasons that Liam Brady had for releasing Kane was that he was a bit chubby and not really the athletic sort. And it just goes to show that sometimes rejection can be a source of a fuel for you to sort of try and prove people wrong in many ways. I remember, of course, another Arsenal legend, David Seaman, Rotherham born. Leeds, of course, was his local club, and Eddie Gray was his hero. He was turned down by Leeds, but he went on to make his name, obviously, with the likes of Peterborough, Birmingham City, QPR, and then at Arsenal. So that's sort of the way it was for Kane. And maybe we felt at the time that with some of our own strikers we had in our youth teams in our academy doing as well as they did, we just didn't really have that much room for Kane. But it is in some ways one that got away. But obviously, it was 2002 that we sent him on his way. Nobody would ever know that he would go on to become as great as he turned out to be. And I think in terms of the strikers that England have been blessed with, who have scored at least 40 goals for England, obviously we haven't mentioned the likes of Mr. Lineker and Mr. Greaves, may he rest in peace. who were very prolific for England. I believe Greaves had 44 goals in about 60 odd games, and Lineker scored his 48 and 80 odd games. So Kane is at least slightly more prolific than Lineker. But I loved watching Lineker play for England. And of course, if you were privileged enough to see Greavesy play at his peak, all for London clubs, by the way, I believe it was Spurs, QPR, Chelsea, and West Ham United. That gentleman was a goal scoring machine. And unlike like Mr. Charlton, and unlike Rooney, Kane, and Lineker, Greavesy does have a World Cup medal, albeit, of course, belatedly. Back to Kane. Well, yes, he is one that in some ways, we never knew that he would go on to do great things elsewhere. Now, given his Tottenham connection, I think if we were to try to, prize them away from them, if we need a striker, we'd be told exactly where to go, and I'm not going to repeat that because I want to keep it PG. And of course, we did steal Sol Campbell from them, and he went on to win silverware with us. But Kane is a different kettle of fish altogether. So I think in terms of his goal scoring record, he is obviously quite prolific, definitely a good target man, but he also, like Rooney and like a few others, lends a lot more to the team in terms of his own link-up play and how he's able to be more of a part of the attack. Certainly the type of striker that we'd like at Arsenal, except unlike Gabriel Jesus and Eddie Nketiah, he has a lot more goals in him. That can't be denied. And there will be some people who will criticize him for not having won silverware either with Tottenham or with England. But, for some strikers, it's a question of how good you want to be at your craft and how you want to prove yourself. And he'll always have the Champions League final in 2019, even if that was a bit of a disappointment. The run that they had to get to that final was nothing short of magnificent. I think he'll be remembered as one of the finest strikers of his generation who, really put his heart into playing for his country. He did score more than a few penalties, but none of the sour grapes is welcome for me. I mean, he's taken his opportunities. He's scored as many goals as he's had. He's definitely left his mark on footballing history, and that is how he should be acknowledged. None of this choker nonsense. Of course, I was disappointed when he sent that penalty over the bar, but nobody should ever be criticized for having the gumption to take a penalty and at least, make sure he does what he did. If he scores, it's wonderful. If he misses, at least he tried, and we can't be too harsh on him for that.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, there's very few players who have a successful youth career and then go on to have a successful career at that club. To be honest, Wayne Rooney, of course, did very, very well. He was always at Everton as a school kid and, did well there. Got into their side then for Man United. But a lot of them do start off at a club, get rejected, and then go to another team and make a success. Of course, there was one man that did stay with the club that he was a youth player at, and of course that is God, Sir Eddie, whatever you want to call him.
Man, not only Sir Eddie though. What about Brett Pittman?
Brett Pittman, yep.
Came through the youth team.
Yep.
Danny Ings come through.
Yes. See, I think what we've been lucky at is because we've been on probably a smaller scale. It's going to be very, very difficult for players to break through from the youth team at this moment in time into our first team as it stands. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible, and I think that's why, when this training ground, bringing it back to us, when this training ground's completed and we've got a first-class academy, which we can achieve. And of course, that's been our priority. And a lot of fans have been like, well, what about the stadium? We can't get enough people in. But bringing in those players from under the nose of a team like Southampton have always traditionally had a very good youth team setup, is what's going to make this club sustainable and successful in the future. Be it Do we have to sell those players? Hopefully not. Hopefully we can stick around and get the stadium sorted at the same time and really build the profile of this football club. But you never know. You never know. And I think there's a lot of exciting stuff that is going to happen in the background with regards to that, but I'm sure that's a conversation for another day. But let's talk about the Cherries that represented us in the international break. And of course, there was a lot of, of course, there's the Euros qualifiers, but quite a lot of friendlies going on at the same time. So, the international Cherries. So, of course, you have got there Kiefer Moore playing for Wales. You've got, of course, Hamid Traore as well there. Phil Billing, of course, did very, very well. And, of course, Semenyo, who played for Ghana. Let's see where we start, though. Ryan Christie. To be fair, when I looked at Scotland's game that was taking place, I thought, well, bloody hell, they've got no chance. But then again, you think of it, and well, what a result that is! That's unbelievable. In fact, I spoke to Doug from the Dugout Football Channel, and we was talking about the Cyprus game initially, and I said, I think you'll beat them. I said, Cyprus did have that period a couple of years back where they looked like they were improving and getting onto a stage where they might push, probably not qualify, but might push for it. Of course, that seems to have fallen by the wayside, like it does with a lot of international teams. Scotland, though, seem to be going in the right direction to qualify for this next Euros.
Yeah, they've had a very, very good start, haven't they? I think you were watching this one, Manny, weren't you? Did you watch this one last night?
Yes, I did. And all I can say is we're on the march with Stevie's army. They're on their way to Germany. And they'll really shake them up when they win the Euro Cup. Because Scotland are the greatest football team. I think a lot of our older viewers might possibly remember that little ditty from 1978 when the Scotland team under Alistair MacLeod went to Argentina to take part in that tournament. And they did have a fine team, but boy, was that an absolute horror show from the get-go. And at least they had the consolation of coming away with a consolation win over a fine Holland team, which went on to reach the final there. But obviously, given the predictions of MacLeod and company that Scotland were going there to win it, it did not sit well with a lot of people, and the first two results were nothing to shout about. This team also, over the last few years, we've seen them qualify for the 2020 Euros, just miss out on qualification for the World Cup, but they also won their Nations League group, which means that while we'll be slumming it out in Group B of the Nations League, the Tartan Army will be in Group A. And I think ever since Steve Clarke came back to the team, he's obviously looked to try to get the best blend of youth and experience in that Scotland team. And it's really paid dividends with a lot of young players coming to the fore. Certainly the appointment of Liverpool's Andrew Robertson as captain has been a bit of a masterstroke, because with his experience, obviously with Liverpool winning the Champions League and the Premier League and really playing his part in that and more, he's also been judged the right person to really inspire the team going forward. Of course, I was there to watch my left back of choice, Kieran Tierney, how he was able to skin Danny Carvajal to provide that semi-assist, as it were, for Scott McTominay's second goal. It was a sight to behold, and Christie also definitely played his part, as did many people. And you can see that even in the absence of one or two players, I think of a certain Craig Gordon, who is still far and away Scotland's best goalkeeper. The spine of that team, gentlemen, is really is a sight to behold. And you can see that that's a team which is quite high on unity, but also they seem to know their roles and play quite well, even with the system that Steve Clarke likes to employ, which is sort of like a 3-5-2, as it were, which can transition into a 5-3-2 in some respects. I think there's the attacking left wing back, while Tierney slots in as the defensive left centre back, and they can also interchange if the situation requires. And also Scott McTominay in the midfield and the likes of Che Adams up front in the defence. You've got the likes of Hanley and Porteous, and of course, whoever is in goal. Obviously, Gordon's a tough act to follow, but Angus Gunn, son of ex-Norwich legend Brian Gunn, didn't do a bad job. And this was definitely a team victory. We also need to put into perspective the fact that under Luis de la Fuente, this Spain team is definitely a team which is in transition. It said goodbye to two of its legends in Sergio Busquets and Sergio Ramos. While Sergio Busquets handled his retirement with grace and dignity, Ramos's retirement was anything but graceful. And they're still trying to work on the best possible blend of youth and experience, and also select players who are in form. I believe their starting goalkeeper, Unai Simon, who I don't rate personally, but for some reason was preferred by Enrique, was injured. So Chelsea's Kepa Arrizabalaga ended up playing both games. And Kepa looked a little bit shaky at times. Why David De Gea is still not being considered for a recall, I have no idea. But this Spanish team also looked in some ways a little bit disjointed. They had to resort to committing a few fouls too many, and they just didn't seem to have an answer against the Scotland team that was buoyed by the Hampden crowd. And there's a long way. It's a long way back for this Spain team. I think I'm not going to say that they're not going to qualify, because they still, at least in theory, should have the know-how to qualify from a group like this, even with Scotland and Norway and other teams in that group. But it is not easy. It is not going to be easy. And Scotland have made the best possible start, and they've continued. They picked up where they left off. Obviously, by winning their Nations League group, they ensured a place in the playoffs. But Clark has also done a brilliant job in making it very clear to the boys, look, I don't want you to rest on your laurels. I want you to qualify for the group proper. And I want you to make sure that you maintain the level of performances that we've seen of you. And World Cup tragedy was a bit of a disappointment, but we've moved on, and now we need to move on from that too. And the boys have responded brilliantly, and Christie's played his part in that, so it was good to see.
I think, an outstanding result against Spain. I completely agree with you, Mally, because Spain are a side in transition. They were the most exciting side, I think, that I've ever watched in World Cup quite a few years back. Well, to be honest, it's 12 years ago now. Well, 13 years ago now, when they won that 2010 World Cup with the likes of Xavi, Iniesta, you name it. The quality of that side was unbelievable. But they still have a lot of talent. They've still got, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the top 3 leagues in the world. And I think they will come back. But what Scotland did was they managed Spain, and they put themselves in pole position to actually, okay, it's still early days, but they put themselves in pole position to get out of that group. And you look at the other teams that they're going to have to play, they've played the most difficult of the lot. There's no reason why they can't get out of that group.
Probably not, but you also can't discount the Norwegian team. Obviously, they lost to Spain in the first game they had, but put in perspective, Erling Haaland wasn't available, and that Norwegian team also has the likes of Martin Odegaard playing in their team, along with the likes of El Yunusi and several others who we know. Orjan Nyland, I think the ex Aston Villa reserve goalkeeper, is their number one, and there are some decent players who, of course, have Premier League experience, so they're not going to be an easy team either. And the Norwegian team over the years has had a knack of pulling some really big results out of the hat. I take the point that was from years gone by when I remember watching them. This team also does have the ability to grind out a result if need be. So Scotland can't afford to take any game for granted. It would be a tragedy, for example, if after doing the hard work of beating Spain, they weren't able to get the result that they wanted against Norway, and that could, set them back. So Steve Clarke's doing the right thing, telling the boys to stay grounded. It is not over until it's over. Simple
Most
as that.
definitely. Let's have a look at the next player, and there is that man, Dongo Ouattara, for Burkina Faso, a team that, to be honest, an international team, until Dongo actually come here, I had absolutely no clue about whatsoever.
Bit strange, really, because if we take a look at the history of Burkina Faso, they've had a really excellent record in the African Nations Cup in more than a few tournaments. I believe it was in 2017 that they reached the semi-final, losing to Egypt on penalties. And before that, buoyed by the goals of a certain Jonathan Petroipa, they reached the final of that tournament. So, I mean, you take a look at Atara's stats, and I want to make sure that I sort of get to that. And I think what you said was perfectly true. In 11 games for the team, he's scored 5 and created 2 assists, which is a brilliant record. I mean, as a striker, you'd want to have a record of scoring something like a goal a game. And I think the updated record of his says that it's 6 goals from 14. I think that might include, some friendlies or whatever. And this team still has some experience in the likes of, Hervé Coffey, Steve Yago, and several others. Bertrand Traore, of course, who I believe should be their captain, and in fact, he is their captain.
Yeah.
And even some other players as well. I mean, certainly some other players like Charles Kabori and a few others have retired, but there are a few, people coming in. And as I said, the African Cup of Nations record in recent times has been really good. In 2013, they were runners-up. 2017, they placed third, and in 2021, they placed fourth. So they're a team actually which has done well historically, and Dongo has just come into the team. So it's going to be interesting to see what sort of a role he will play in the team if he can take them forward. And of course, I think he's only really started playing for the team in 2021. So by that time, these AFCON championships have been done and dusted. But he could play a bit of a role, and it's wonderful to see him in that list of players who are contributing with more and more goals. And certainly he can support the likes of Bertrand Traore and the other strikers. So it's looking up for him. And I think he will go on to be an important player for them if he can keep himself free from injuries. 21 years of age, the sky's his limit.
Well, I'm just having a look at the record. Of course, Burkina Faso have never qualified for a World Cup. I wonder if they are going into a little bit of a golden age, and maybe that will be on the agenda. But what is great about this is, of course, the timing, the performance, the goal, and of course, I'm hoping that will lead into, and Matt, he deserves a goal. Do you think the reason why he hasn't got it so far, because he had a really good opportunity against Liverpool and he's had opportunities in the other games that he's played, do you feel that maybe it's just a little bit of confidence in the Premier League that might just be lacking? His crossing's exceptional, but just in front of goal, I honestly think if he gets one, I think it'll be like buses, and a couple will follow.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, let's hope that this international goal this week spurs him on in front of goal for us for the next few games. But yeah, I think that's the only thing that's been missing for him, really. His performances, like you say, have been absolutely superb. Like we were saying a couple of weeks ago on here, since he signed, he's created the most assists in the Premier League. So he's got everything about his game. He just, like you say, he's just been unlucky in front of goal, hasn't he? So yeah, hopefully this goal that he scored this week will give him some confidence in front of goal for us.
And yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. Just an interesting fact about Burkina Faso. For quite a period of time, they actually played, and they were part of France. They actually played as a team called Upper Volta, which sounds a little bit like something from FIFA, doesn't it? I think it's in Volta Football on FIFA or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a resemblance. Maybe somebody could put in the comments if there is a link there, or maybe I'm just presuming something there.
Yeah,
Probably.
well, interestingly enough, Craig, Upper Volta was the former name of Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, of course, being the African version of that name, and I believe they've, opted to go for the more African version,
Yeah.
as a lot of these countries have definitely. And yeah, that's I think if that's how it's listed on FIFA, then maybe there's a reason behind that. There is that significance. So historically, I think that might answer your question. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Anybody who knows, put it in the comments. I think I've started something there, or I could be talking absolute tripe. It's one of the two. It's one of the two, isn't it? Let's have a look at the next player, and of course, Hamid Traore played for the Ivory Coast or Côte d'Ivoire.
It's Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire. It's French.
So there we are. You said it perfectly, Manny. I did. To be honest, it's Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire. Have I done that justice there?
Yeah, you don't pronounce the T, otherwise that's perfect.
Okay, Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire. Got it.
Yep.
There we are. Excellent. You learn something new every day, but Hamid played twice against Comoros. And to be honest, let's call them the Ivory Coast because that's probably a little bit easier. I do apologise if that's the wrong terminology, but they've, of course, since Drogba have disappeared a little bit, but of course, players coming through like Hamid Traore, I'm sure they will be hoping that they can get back into the reckoning effectively, because they've gone a little bit quiet. They've always been a little bit of a force in African football, but it was really Drogba that put them on the world map, wasn't it?
Yeah, Didier Drogba and a few others, of course. You can't forget the likes of the Toure brothers, Yaya and
Oh
Kolo.
no, can't. Sorry, I forgot them.
And of course, Gervinho. Of course, Kolo and Gervinho both played for my lot, Arsenal. And even now, if you take a look at the squad, they do have the likes of Max Gradel and Serge Aurier, who is, of course, now with Nottingham Forest, who provide a lot in terms of experience. But I believe it was in 2015 that they won the African Nations Cup. And since then, yes, 2015. Since then, they've sort of fallen away a little bit. And for these African teams, Craig, how you perform well in whether it's in qualification for the World Cup or qualification for the AFCON will determine how much you are, how big you are as a force. And I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. As long as Drogba was, a part of that team, and also the other star players I've mentioned taking the team forward, that was always going to be the case that they would certainly punch above their weight and try and give a good account of themselves. And you can also see that from 2006 to 2014, they were in 3 consecutive World Cups and didn't do too badly, but they failed to qualify for 2018 or 2022. So as you said, quite rightly so, they have fallen away a little bit. So there is some experience in the team, but not too much. And a few other experienced players like Wilfred Cannon and Wilfred Zaha, of course, of Crystal Palace, and Maxwell Cornet of West Ham United. I think they also need to, come back into the picture a lot more. And we still there still needs to be that level of cohesion in the team. There still needs to be that level of consistency. And they also had to go through a bit of an upheaval because, if memory serves me right, their first choice goalkeeper was a guy named Sylvain Boo, who was supposed to be the first choice goalkeeper for the African Cup of Nations 2 years ago. But he tested positive for a banned substance, apparently, so he couldn't participate. And since then, he hasn't been considered by the Ivory Coast ever since, which is a bit of a shame because he is a more than decent quality goalkeeper. And it was he who backstopped the Ivory Coast to the final in 2015, only to have to miss out on playing in the final due to injury. So this team is, of course, a long way away from that golden generation from 2006 to 2000 to the mid 2010s, when they were qualifying for World Cups and doing really well in the AFCONs for themselves. I just think that it might be time for perhaps a lot more of these ex-internationals to return to the setup, maybe as assistant coaches or what have you, to try and help provide a reminder of the days gone by. I see here that Kolo Toure and Maxime Guamene, former players themselves, have come back to the team as assistant coaches, but there still needs to be a little bit more. And I would definitely like to see some of these players, if they've made the transition into coaching, then they definitely need to come back and really contribute more to the team. Someone like Boubacar Barry, who is, of course, the winning keeper in that 2015 final, could be an excellent choice for goalkeeping coach. And some former Ivorian international could be the head coach, especially if that person has done his coaching badges. They've had a selection of French coaches over the years, a few from Belgium, but not really too many people from the Ivory Coast who have coached the Ivorian team. And I think that level of connection to the generations gone by, especially the golden generation, is missing. So there needs to be that change, hopefully, and hopefully we'll see a lot more. Hopefully we'll see an improvement in performances, because when you have that many people coming back in and being involved in the system, it can only be a good thing in terms of serving as inspiration to the younger players in the squad.
Yep, definitely, definitely. And of course, we had a player that played. I don't know how much we can talk about this map, but played a minute against South Korea for Uruguay, of course. One team who really are back on the world map. They've been on the world map for years and years and years and years. But let's be fair. It's a minute, is Venus showing some real promise, actually. When he has come on against Liverpool, that run was brilliant. That run was excellent. I think there's a really good player in there, and I'm sure he'll get more chances, won't he?
Yeah, I'm sure he will at Bournemouth while he's still here. I'm sure we'll see a bit more of him. But I just feel sorry for the poor fella. He's gone all the way to Japan and Korea, and he's played a minute. These things happen. Sometimes you got to be part of the squad to get into the squad. But I think he's made a few appearances for Uruguay before, hasn't he, in the past?
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he has.
So, but yeah, not a lot we can probably say on this one.
No, fair enough. Let's move on to Anton Semenyo, who was playing for Ghana. On the score sheet, netting against Angola, of course, a team who got to a World Cup. Was it 2010 or 2014 when Angola got to the World Cup?
I believe Angola qualified in 2006. That, of course, was a team which was in the same group as Portugal, who had in fact colonized Angola in the days gone by, and that was a quite interesting match. And they didn't really do too badly. But Ghana have always been a team that has been heralded as one of the best African teams.
Yeah.
in the entire continent, and a lot has been expected of them ever since their breakthrough in 2006 and 2010, when they, of course, qualified for both of those World Cups. And actually, in 2010, they were, of course, a penalty kick away from making the semi-finals and making history as the first African team to make the semi-finals. Of course, it was Morocco who ended up getting that record in Qatar, and obviously, just like the Ivory Coast, 2000 to 2014 were the years where they really qualified and did well for themselves. I think they qualified in 2014 for the World Cup, but didn't really do too well. But obviously, in 2006 to 2010, they were outstanding. And then this time around, they came to Qatar. They won one of their games, but lost. I think they drew. Yeah, they lost their remaining games, but including the grudge match against Uruguay, which saw both Ghana and Uruguay exit thanks to that heart-stopping result from the South Korea-Portugal game.
Yeah.
They're in Portugal's group. And then, of course, if you take a look at Ghana as well, they're four-time champions of the African Cup of Nations, but their last triumph was in 1982. And ever since then, they've been runners-up 3 times and have had a slew of quarterfinal finishes. They had a third-place finish, but they've never won. And so Ghana are sort of a team, Craig, which really in international terms and certainly in continental terms are a very frustrating sort of team, because all the talent they have, all the great players that they produced over the years, the quality of football that they've been known to play, and they still haven't really gotten the results that they would have that their fans would have expected from them and what they would have wanted for themselves, which is all the more saddening and all the more frustrating. But it is what it is, and you can't really do too much about it. All you can do is, again, play the hand that you've been given. And I see Semenyo in the squad, the number 17. As you mentioned, he scored against Angola. That game also was supposed to feature Thomas Partey, but I think he was withdrawn with an injury. But this team as well, I think, with the likes of Andre and Jordan Ayew, the Ayew brothers, of course, Andre's with Forest and Jordan's with Crystal Palace. And of course, Kamaldeen Sulemana, the forward, is with Southampton, as is Mohamed Salisu and a few others in the Premier League, or at least in the English leagues. Daniel Amate with Leicester City. And this team also has to try to shake off the ghosts of failures past and try and move on and rediscover their identity. And the likes of Partey will play a role in that. And there are some other experienced players who have to also come back in from the cold. But I think when it comes to the Ghanaian team, the weight of expectation is what, really holds them back. And I think the more youngsters they can get into their team who can really start to perform well and really start to, add some excitement to that team, the better it could possibly be. Because again, these senior players in the squad are into their 30s and they can't go on forever. I mean, Partey's only 29, but his injury record, of course, isn't really the best. So, again, the Ghanaians have to be really mindful of, the team they have and try and make sure they build a more than decent team and try and get some good results. And if they get some good results and start to build on that, then maybe we can see a return to prominence, maybe a first in a few years. And I think from what we're seeing from Semenyo, he could very well have a role to play in that.
Yeah, definitely. And, great to see him on the score sheet. Hopefully, like Atara, he can take that into the Premier League. Of course, Kiefer Moore and Chris Metham had a very, very decent spell for Wales. Now, this was a conversation that I had the other day, and a thought that I had. And Wales have been living under that rock that Gareth Bale will always be there, will always be help them be successful. now he's retired, I think we're seeing a new Wales, and a Wales which is exciting. A Wales that isn't relying just on the one player, and I think from the opening results, especially that draw against Croatia, and Croatia are no mugs. Um, there's a lot of promise.
Oh, there is. There definitely is. And I saw the game against Croatia, and obviously Moore had a bit of a disappointing time being taken off after 17 minutes, not quite able to get anything on target. But obviously that brilliant assist from Mepham for the equalising goal. I believe it was Broadhead, who scored that, Nathan Broadhead. And yeah, that obviously was a really good moment because Croatia literally had Wales under the cosh, and Danny Ward had to be forced into making some really important saves. So you can just imagine, you're playing your first, senior, your first important match. It's not a friendly. It really is an important qualifying match after Bale and Chris Gunter and Joe Allen retired. So that takes obviously a huge collection of experiences taken away. And you also have Wayne Hennessy, your first choice goalkeeper, injured, and Aaron Ramsey captaining Wales. I think Ramsey also has to be, slightly criticised for not really being able to sort of pull his weight. But clearly, with his exploits and his role in Wales's triumphs over the years, he has been entrusted with that responsibility of trying to guide the team forward. And there are some new players coming in. Broadhead, of course, being one of them. So going back to Craig's question, yeah, it is going to be a spot of relief because Bale obviously was a talisman. But I'm not going to say that he necessarily held the team back because, of course, he got his opportunity to. He made the most of his opportunities to perform as well as he did, and some of his performances for Wales were superhuman. But let's also not deny that around him, everyone also played their part. Everyone contributed, let's say, a grain of sand at the very least to all of those successes. But Bale was just the one who would stand out. And so, with him gone, obviously a new team, a new set of players will have to, pick up that slack and try and pick up from where he was able to leave the team off. And in this group, I mean, given that the top two qualify, it's very hard not to look beyond Croatia and Wales themselves. And certainly, if Wales can continue this form, then all will be good to qualify for another tournament. It's a bit of a shame, really, though, that ever since Euro 2016, whenever they've qualified for a tournament, they haven't really done too well. I mean, we all remember their performance in Qatar, and even in the Euros, they reached the second stage but didn't really go too far ahead. And so, obviously, it is going to be a case of a new identity, but with a lot of old players from that setup. And of course, Mepham and Moore were involved in both Euro 2020 and Qatar 2022, if I'm not wrong. So there is still that spine of experience, but it's around that spine that more and more new players are going to come in, and they will also look to try and, do a great deal of work and try and pick up more of the slack. And I think Robert Page has made it very clear that he doesn't want to see a mass retirement or a mass exodus of players from his plans. So he still plans to keep a lot of the experienced players as much as he can. And certainly Ramsey and Hennessy will have their roles to play, but as do Mepham and Moore. But things do look good. It's still early days in some ways, and I think results like this will do a lot to shake off the gloom of their display in Qatar, where it was forgettable in many ways, but they also did have some moments of promise, and I think the crowd also have to be saluted for the way they supported their team to the end. They don't have their motto "Together Stronger" for nothing, and I think "Together Stronger" is what will take the Wales team forward, with or without their experienced stars.
And to be honest, I think with Gunter retiring, I think it gives new hot prospects an opportunity, and they've got plenty of them. They've got plenty of them, so I think there is that. But I can understand why Rob Page doesn't want to change everything all at once. It's got to be a gradual transition rather than just everybody in and everybody out. Um, and I think they'll be. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll get to this Euros. Um, will they ever top 2016? Well, let's be fair. They were very unlucky not to get to the final. Really.
Oh, they were very unlucky. And I remember when England suffered the humiliation of losing to Iceland, I remember getting behind the Welsh team because,
Mhm.
you know, as a UK patriot, I get behind all UK teams and also the Republic of Ireland whenever they play. It's that sort of British Isles connection. I'm not tribal like other fans. And seeing how they played, how they gelled under Chris Coleman, you could see how fantastic they were as a team. Ryan Giggs took them forward as well, and Robert Page obviously picked up where Giggs left off. Um, Maybe that 2016 team, in terms of the quality of the starting 11 and throughout the entire squad, was probably the best team they had because almost every single player in that team was in their prime in terms of their age, in really terrific nick, and
Mhm.
they were just really willing to make their mark. I think when it came to Qatar, some of the players had gotten on a little bit, and yeah, you still need to make sure you bring more than a few youngsters into the team because, again, as Wales's rugby team are finding out, you can't keep holding on to the old guard forever. You've got to get to bring in a lot of new players and also manage everything. And just like Rob Page, Warren Gatland does have a bit of a role to play. But while Gatland will only be in his role with the Welsh team for the World Cup and then he'll go, Page might want to stick it out for a little bit longer as long as results are in his favour. So, yeah, the ball's in their court. That's all that can be said.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, Wales. I think exciting future, and of course the last man that we have to mention. He's been overlooked so many times, but he got his opportunity, and he's taken what he can out of it, hasn't he?
Matt, you want to take this one?
Um, I Well, do you know what, Manny? You're the international expert, so I'll let you carry on with this one.
Yeah, well, it's yeah, obviously it's good to see him back in the setup, of course, and just goes to show that earning an international call up is never going to be easy. You've got to make sure your performances demand it, and with Denmark as well, they're also a team which also is trying to. I mean, they're certainly one of the top European teams. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Semi-finalists at the Euros, of course, losing out to us. Obviously, the that controversy with the laser and all of that, but they're a really fine team as well. And getting into this team is not easy by any means. And of course, Christian Eriksen was injured and unavailable, but they still had players like Simon Kjær, the captain, Kasper Schmeichel, and of course Pierre-Emile Højbjerg of Tottenham Hotspur, two Brentford players in Damsgaard and Norgard, and of course some Billing in that squad. Martin Brathwaite, of course, who's played for Barcelona now with Espanyol in Spain, and of course Jorgensen at Brentford too, another Brentford player, and Christensen with Leeds. There's a good
Mhm.
selection of talent in that team. A lot of good players from which the Danish manager can choose, and so it is really good to see Billing in that squad and really doing as well as he did. And of course, there are several players, of course, who are yet to come back into the wings. We will add a little bit more competition. So obviously, the fact that Billing only played, he certainly didn't play the full game, but he played about 17 and 25, 13 and 25 minutes in those two games, and was probably brought on to try and show the coach what he could possibly do. And of course, Billing's first cap was in 2020. not too long after joining Bournemouth. So he'll always be an international cherry, and that's something which provides some satisfaction. And he still has quite some way to go, and obviously he's going to have to try and work really hard to see if he can, keep himself in the thoughts of his national team coach. And Denmark, of course, will still have many of their experienced players. I don't see the senior players lasting until the World Cup in 2026, but certainly 2024 is when they can give it a try. And then maybe after that, we can see a new team with some of the lesser, I wouldn't say lesser experience, but certainly the middle experienced players leading the way through. And then more and more players like Billing playing a bit of an important role in that regard. If you take a look at Billing's age, he is 26, so he does have some chance to forge an international career for himself if he keeps working hard and, withstands the competition. But how he performs for Bournemouth will have a bearing on this. And I would like to see him do. He's done quite well this season, obviously, and shown some promise. But now, coming into this run-in is when I think you lot will expect him to stand up and be captain. If he does well for Bournemouth, does as well as he's done so far. Should be happy days for Bournemouth and happy days for Denmark.
Yeah, and I think, he has been a star this season and somebody that we want to make sure that is at the club for years to come. He is a confidence player, but when he's got that confidence, he is one of the most talented, if not the most talented player at the club at the moment. So yeah, long may that continue, and I'm sure he'll get many more opportunities. Let's, though, of course, we've spoken about internationals for about an hour now. Let's talk about this game against Fulham. Let's start off. Actually, no, let's rewind. Let's talk firstly about a certain man's contract. And it's that man, Neto. Now, Matt, we had this conversation, didn't we, at Dean Court a couple of weeks back? And this was how the conversation went. It was basically, I said, Neto's a great goalkeeper. Are we going to be able to keep him if we go down? And Matt, what was your response?
You're gonna have to enlighten me on that one.
It was pretty much no. It was pretty much, well, to be honest, Neto is a top level goalkeeper. But this shows what this club's all about, doesn't it, really?
I think personally this shows obviously from the ownership side shows us a lot, really.
It does.
To be able to convince a keeper of his caliber to stay with the potential of going down, unless there's any clauses in the contract that people aren't aware of. But I think that Neto, now he's captain, I think he's got a lot of belief in this side can stay up. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the main reasons why he has signed the deal. Plus, I think at most of the clubs he's been at previously, he's normally been a number 2. And now he can see at Bournemouth, he will be number 1.
Yeah.
And deservedly so. I mean, he's a fantastic keeper. So yeah, I think this shows a lot of intent from the ownership. I think maybe making him captain has helped make his decision. Obviously, his game time has definitely probably helped him make his decision. Maybe he's learned a bit about the Championship since he's been here. Maybe he's looked at it and thought, well, actually, that ain't a bad division. So
we don't want to be going there, though, Matt.
Obviously not.
But
I think there's a lot of things that's gone on here to make him sign this deal. I mean, obviously there was rumours before Christmas that the likes of Inter Milan, I think, were sniffing around, and a couple of others. So yeah, to sign this up, I think this is fantastic news for the football club going forward.
Yeah, and most definitely. And Premier League appearances, there is the statistics. 17 Premier League appearances, 1 cup appearance, 4 clean sheets, but of course that is in a side that are down the bottom in the relegation scrap. Goals conceded, to be honest, 23, that's not bad considering. I'm trying to work out how many Travers has conceded. Okay, yeah, we had that 9-0 defeat. And also 4-0 against City, 3-0 against Arsenal. That makes 16. So to be honest, he hasn't conceded that many more, but made a lot more appearances. Of course, 4 yellow cards. I think, well, we did miss him in that period, didn't we, as well, when he did have that injury?
Yeah, massively. Massively missed him.
Mhm.
You could see a real difference in the two keepers. Obviously, like I say, with Travers and Neto, you could see the difference between them.
Yeah,
Like I say, I've said this all along. I'll say it again. Travers will be an absolutely outstanding goalkeeper one day. And
agree.
I think, last season the guy was superb. Obviously, best keeper in the championship or one of.
Hmm.
Um, and I think he'll learn off Neto as well. He'll hopefully improve his game by training with someone with this quality every day. So yeah, I think an interesting stat is that he's still to be beaten from outside the box.
Yeah, yeah, which really says something. Really says something
Yeah,
about our goalkeeper. And
he's pulled off some fantastic saves, isn't he, from shots outside the box this season. It's probably a real strength of his, but I'm pretty certain he might be the only goalkeeper in the league not to concede outside the box. But don't quote me on that.
do you know what? When this signing was confirmed, I thought that was an outstanding bit of business. And then of course we started the season with Travers. Where does this leave Travers now? Because my theory, of course, we signed Darren Randolph. Randolph, to be perfectly honest, was never going to get a game. He was always going to struggle. He was really a backup. But my theory, and back at the time, when the January window was still open, was why don't we let Travers go on loan to the Championship? And I think that remains. Whilst Neto is at the club, we need him to get experience at a decent level, and he could do a decent job. There's a lot of Championship sides that are calling out for a goalkeeper like Mark Travers. He was fantastic last season for us, so somebody will take a go on him. And I personally, if I'm looking at it, I wouldn't want it to be a team at the top of the league. I wouldn't want it to be somebody where he's just going to be stood there waiting. I'd want him to be busy and learning his trade and being under pressure and having to be in situations with defenders in front of him which aren't particularly as good. What's your theory on Travers?
To whom are you addressing this question?
Well, both of you. Go for it.
Matt, you can go. Matt, you can go first, mate. You're the one who knows more about Bournemouth than I do, and I think you're the best person to go first.
For me, it's quite simple with Travs. He's on a decent deal. He's on a long deal.
Yeah.
If we stay up, I mean, even if we unfortunately do obviously slip through the trapdoor, which hopefully we don't. You've got to loan the guy out.
Yeah.
Neto, if Neto does come down with us, if we do go down, which hopefully we're not going to, hopefully the ideal situation is we stay up. Randolph sits on the bench as the number 2, and Travs gets a full season out on loan somewhere.
Agree.
That is the thing is with a goalkeeper, they mature a lot later. Like Neto is probably at his peak now. Whereas Travs is still, a lot younger. So it's vitally important that he he gets game time. I mean, like Will Dennis. I've been saying for ages, why haven't we got Will Dennis out on loan? Now he has gone out on loan, so I'm sure that's benefiting him. So I think it's very important with young goalkeepers is to get them game time. So for me, definitely let's get him a decent club to go to on loan, get some games under his belt. I kind of agree where you're coming from. You don't want him stood there for 90 minutes every week with not much to do. Obviously, you want him to be tested. So the club's got to be the right club that they loan him out to. I mean, if worse comes to the worst, would League One necessarily be a bad drop?
See, I thought of this, and the place that jumped out to me was Derby County. But to be perfectly honest, I think he's too good for League One. I think a team like if you sent him on loan to Rotherham or Cardiff or Huddersfield, one of those teams where he is going to be put in situations where he is going to have to make decisions based on players in front of him who aren't as talented as what he's got at Bournemouth. That's what you want. Is you don't want you don't want your goalkeeper to go on loan to Sheffield United or Burnley, where they're going to be stood around because the rest of the team are that good. Burnley are basically walking away with the championship this season. You wouldn't want him to go there. Yes, he might get a medal. It might be a great experience for him on that front, but it's not great experience on, he's not being tested there. So that's why I say bottom end of the championship. Go to a team where you can make a real impact, where you're going to have to make decisions because you've not got that back four, back three, back five that are of that quality. Rotherham would be a great one.
I see where you're coming from, where you're saying, a side lower down in the league, but look at where we were for most of last season, and look how many crucial saves that guy made and kept us in games.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, very, very true.
Just because you're at the bottom of the league doesn't mean necessarily. Just because you're top of the league, sorry, doesn't mean that you're necessarily not getting battered every week in terms of shots at your goal. I mean, there's plenty of games last season where he has made saves that have kept Bournemouth in games, and that's when we second or first. Throughout that season, he made a lot of crucial saves. So, I mean, basically, the club's got to be right. The game time's got to be right. And he just needs more game time, doesn't he?
I think personally a side lower down in the table would be perfect for Mark Travers because he will be put under that pressure. He did make some crucial saves last season, but at the same time, what he had around him was of a decent quality. Whereas Rotherham, he's going to be absolutely bombarded with balls going into the box, especially if they're playing teams like Burnley. Let's be fair. The three teams. If we stay up and he goes on loan, somebody like Rotherham or Cardiff or Huddersfield, whoever, that team stays up, he's going to be hit for six with the amount of crosses coming into that box, the amount of one-on-one situations where he's got to make that right decision. Whereas, yes, he made some crucial saves for us, but at the same time, we had the quality as well that if there was an error, we could cover that up pretty quickly. Playing for Rotherham, you won't get that.
Couldn't agree more. And obviously, with a Bournemouth connection, you need to take a look at a certain Mr. Ramsdale, who I believe in 3 seasons with you lot, he was actually loaned out to both Chesterfield and Wimbledon in his first 2, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
And I believe he was relegated with Chesterfield, but ended up keeping Wimbledon up. And then, of course, that experience also served him well somewhat when he had his run in the first team during that 2019-2020 season, where he made some good saves, but faced a lot of shots as well, and was powerless to stop the Cherries from getting relegated. Those two loan moves, obviously, to lower division clubs did help him a bit. And of course, for the supreme example of going on loan and prospering, and with a Rotherham connection, take a look at a certain World Cup winner by the name of Damian Emiliano Martinez Romero.
Yeah.
In 8 seasons or so with the Arsenal first team, 2 with the youth team, so that was 10 years with us. In 10 years, he made a total of 38 appearances, 15 in the league. His clubs on loan included Oxford United, where he played once, Sheffield. I don't know if he. Hold on a minute.
Sheffield Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday, actually. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So he made 1 appearance for Oxford United in League Two. He made 15 appearances for Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship and the FA Cup. 8 appearances for Rotherham in the Championship. 13 appearances for Wolves in the Championship and 2 in the League Cup, 15 in total. And he was going on loan repeatedly and feeling a little bit more and more frustrated. And there was a time when he was actually considering giving up football altogether. Things didn't quite work out for him in Spain with Getafe, despite the fact, obviously, that as a native Spanish speaker, you'd expect him to adapt well. Only 5 appearances in La Liga and 2 in the Spanish Copa del Rey. But it was at Reading, I think, where he really came into his own. And in 2018 and 2019, I do believe that he was in the Championship at that time and he helped them stay up. He still remembers that experience as one of his best in football. And this is a guy who has won everything there is to win with Argentina: the Copa America, the Franchi Trophy, and now the World Cup. And he could go on and on and on. And so loan moves definitely can strengthen a goalkeeper. But as you both rightly say, the club has to be right. So how this segues back to Travers is this. Obviously, I thought he was quite instrumental and influential in helping you lot get promoted, but
Yeah.
I think the Premiership has proved to be a little bit of a level too high in a way. And I think why Randolph was signed, and you might be onto something there, Craig, is that if you have a situation where if you hopefully stay up and can send Travers out on loan, in both Morara Neto and Darren Randolph, you have 2 international goalkeepers, senior goalkeepers, who provide a wealth of experience between them who can compete. Now, obviously, as you said, Randolph is getting to the end of his career, and the reason why he has never played for Ireland since those heady days of 2016 and 2017, 2018, when obviously he was a star for the Irish team, I think his lack of football at West Ham has really damaged his career prospects, and now he's searching for clubs and searching for game time. Maybe he'll get something at Bournemouth. I don't know, but Travers might need the loan move, and it could certainly work out well for him. And in securing Neto to a 3-year deal, you've said it perfectly, Craig. Neto has played at some really terrific clubs over his career. He served as a backup to some really top quality goalkeepers, including a certain Gianluigi Buffon at Juventus.
Yeah.
But he's at an age where he would like to settle down and get some proper game time. And he sees, obviously, being at Dean Court as providing him the best of both worlds. I think, if he's Brazilian, obviously, it might be stereotypical, but he does love the seaside. He does love the beach. So being at Bournemouth is the best thing for him in many ways. And obviously, he's become such a pivotal figure in your team's performances. Some terrific saves, a few slight errors here and there, but on the whole, he is more than decent. And I think the best part about him playing as many games as he's played is that the more he's played after being in the shadows for so long, the better he seems to have gotten. And I think if he's able to stay up this season, next season, he can certainly kick on with the team in the Premiership or even in the Championship. He can definitely do a fine job. But you've made a really good buy with him and securing him to a 3-year deal. I think he sees this place as the place where he can, play out the best years, the peak years of his career and settle down, maybe even retire, perhaps before going back to Brazil to play one more year over there. And it's a deal which suits both club and it's a deal which suits both the player. I say good luck to him. He's earned it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And it's a remarkable bit of business. It's a remarkable bit of business. And I think, um, I'm delighted that he's going to be staying at the football club. Let's look and focus on to this weekend's game against Fulham. Now, Fulham, of course, are a team that's went up with us. They won the championship. And during my preview with Jack from Fulhamish, I discussed our great start, but also how it kind of fell apart. 37 points from 15 games at the start of the season, phenomenal. But Fulham managed to edge in there, and they were a bit more consistent. But what we'll do is, firstly, we'll have a look at the players that play for both. But before we do that, Fulham are an interesting football club because they're not one of the biggest in London, but they've got some bloody famous fans. Believe it or not, there was a statue of Michael Jackson outside Craven Cottage for some time. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
Hugh Grant is a Fulham fan.
Yes.
Believe it or not.
Yes.
Richard Osmond as well. And I tell you what, one of my favourite actresses in the entire world. Yeah. Matt's just guessed it. He's just gone. Yeah, I know what you're going to come out with in a second. Margot Robbie. Absolutely love Margot Robbie. Let's be fair. Favourite Margot Robbie film, Manny?
I suppose I haven't seen too much of her, but she did make a cameo appearance in The Big Short with Steve Carell and a few others. So, obviously it was a very short role, but she did add to it. And I'm sure I remember watching Neighbours back in the day when Kylie and Jason were the in thing. And I think, not being able to watch it since then, I think I never got to see her. I never got to see the likes of Natalie Imbruglia and others. But Australia do produce some really good actors and actresses. Let me tell you that.
They do. Holly Valance was quite good, but I think Margot Robbie's on another level. And when we look at Wolf of Wall Street, come on, Matt, you're shaking your head because you're thinking, here he goes. He's going on his Margot Robbie tirade. But that was a great movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all right.
It's all right. She had a great part in it.
Yeah.
She did. She's, a great part, and believe it or not,
I forgot that this turned into film 2023 with Barry Norman.
No, we haven't got that far in depth. Don't worry about that. We digress every now and then. It adds to it, yeah. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, definitely. But Margot Robbie is a Fulham fan. How that's ever happened, we'll never know. We'll have to find out one day. Margot, get in contact. Come on this show. And Matt's wanted to say something about Margot Robbie.
You wanted a film, didn't you?
Go on. Yep, we want a film with Margot Robbie.
Squad.
Suicide Squad, yes. Quality.
Very good Harley Quinn, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
I won't say no more.
Fair enough. Do you know what? That's brilliant. That's definitely going in the thumbnail. You'll have seen the thumbnail of this show beforehand, but yes, you've probably been waiting for the past hour for the Margot Robbie talk. Here it is, all especially for you, all 4 minutes of it. Right, moving swiftly on, let's get on to the players that played for both. So, we do have fun here, don't we? We do have fun. That was a bit of light humour. But the players that played for both Bournemouth and Fulham, I know one straight away. Probably not. How many can you recite off the top of your head, Matt?
With the ones that are in this.
Well, yeah. What a stupid question that is. Matt has, as you know, Matt does all this graphical stuff because You know, yeah, you're better at it than me. But at the same time, yeah, Matt has put it all together. So what a stupid question. How many players can you recite, Manny?
I couldn't tell you. The best thing I can do is tell you that Scott Parker has, of course, managed both Fulham and Bournemouth, but that's a very easy sort of thing to say. We
Yes.
all know it. As far as players are concerned, again, it's very hard to really put a finger on it. I couldn't tell you, to be honest. So I'm waiting for Mr. Harrison's package.
Right, here we go. Mr. Harrison's package. Here we go. Well, this is Mr. Harrison's package. It is being opened up now. It's all gone. It's all gone Pete Tug, isn't it, now? Oh dear, I've started this something now. I've started something. Right. So, of course, one that is playing for us this season, Mr. Ryan Fredericks. And I think good bit of business, actually. I didn't think so at the start.
No, I didn't think so either. I had quite a few West Ham fans say to me that, oh God, you don't want to sign him. He's injured all the time. But what we have seen of him, and this is a point going back to earlier.
Yeah.
Villa. He wasn't on the bench for Villa, and that game we probably could have done with him coming on for Adam Smith, but he wasn't on the bench that day. But I think he's a good, decent player. And I remember the Forest game away. I remember him. Did he come on in the second half? And
yes, I think. Yeah, I think he did.
So yeah, he's turned out to be a good squad player.
Yeah, I think so, and I really do rate him. Of course, he joined from Fulham because he knew Scott Parker. Of course, Parker left, but to be fair,
West Ham.
West Ham. Yes, of course. Sorry. See, this is why you rely on Matt, because Matt knows his shit, whereas me, sometimes I make the odd cock up, don't I, Matt?
Yes.
Thanks for agreeing with me. Let's move on. Harry Wilson. So a player that we actually discussed in our preview. A player that we probably both got a similar sort of opinion on. Both myself and Jack had the same sort of opinion on Harry Wilson.
I would, if I just chuck in mine before maybe you chuck yours in, if yours is similar to the Fulham channel.
Yeah.
A player with a lot of potential. I mean, Manny will know from watching him play for Wales and Liverpool and others. A player that's got so much potential, but I think at times he doesn't seem to show it.
Agree.
And I thought at Bournemouth we saw a lot of potential there, but I wasn't overly bothered that we never signed the player. Does that make sense? Like, you see him score a worldie of a free kick against Man City, and he did pop up with a few goals for us, to be fair. But then there were games when he just looked bang average.
I'm with you on that, Matt.
Is that a terrible criticism of the player, or I don't know, but that's just the impression I had. I mean, I don't know what Manny thinks of the player, but that's the impression I got.
He was a good set piece player, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah, very good set piece player. Yeah, very good. But there'd be times when you're watching him and he either doesn't, he beats one man, beats the second man, loses the ball to the third man, that kind of, So, I mean, yeah, Manny, what do you reckon of him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I take a look at his record, when he went to Fulham on loan for the 2022 season, that was their promotion season, he played his role. 41 appearances in the Championship, 10 goals there. So he did make his contribution, but he hasn't scored during the league campaign for Fulham. And what you say does have quite a bit of sense to it, because you obviously don't want to see a winger like him, who is capable of doing so much and doing some really good things, have games where he starts to drift away. And I think another player that is quite similar to him in ilk would be Sorba Thomas, also a Welshman who
Mhm.
was with Huddersfield and has now joined Blackburn Rovers on loan. He might get a chance to be a part of a promotion campaign. Good luck to him. I don't know what happens to him afterwards. So you think that he is 26 years old. He already has over 40 caps for the Welsh team and 5 goals. So I think Robert Page does see him as a pretty key component in the Welsh team going forward. He can certainly, he doesn't really score, he might not score too many, but he can certainly play his role. But there is a really good point that you make there, Matt, and that he might need to really um, improve his consistency. But I guess as long as he's playing the role that his coaches and managers want him to play, then you can't be too critical of him in that regard. But it'll be interesting to see how well he plays, given his return to Dean Court coming up this weekend.
Terrible, hopefully.
Yep, fingers
Hopefully,
crossed.
yep. Goes without saying.
Well, let's look at the next player, Sean O'Driscoll.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a blast from the past, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of
Sure.
course, former manager as well.
Yeah. I don't. I remember very, very minimal about Sean as a player. He was kind of retiring. I think he was like player physio at one point when I was a wee lad. But yeah, very successful. Well, I say a very successful manager, but he had success. Obviously, we went down under his management, but he did bring us back up in 2003 through the playoffs.
Yeah.
Went on to have a pretty decent managerial career with Doncaster, and at one point he was at Liverpool. I think he can't remember which manager he was working alongside, but he was one of the assistant managers at Liverpool at one point, and he's had jobs with the FA, and he's even been with Brian Stock, I think, for a spell at Weymouth. So he's
Yep.
been about a bit. He has been about a bit, Sean O'Driscoll, but he was the record appearance holder for the club for a long time until a certain Mr. Fletcher broke the record. So yeah, he is one of the legends of the club. But obviously, in his early days, he represented Fulham.
Yep. Yeah, he certainly did. Of course, 423 appearances for Bournemouth, 148 for Fulham. But yeah, well, 604 appearances within his professional career, which is majority of those being at Dean Court. So yeah, Sean O'Driscoll, of course, former manager as well, and yes, he was the assistant at Liverpool. And that was in 2015. So, if I'm right in thinking, 2015, Liverpool.
Brendan Rodgers.
That might have been Brendan Rodgers. I think you're right. 2015.
Yep, 2015. And he
Yep.
left in 2015 after Rodgers got sacked.
There you go. There you are. See, Manny's got it all.
Our football expert has just put us straight on that one.
No, thank Wikipedia. I'm no expert. I have Wikipedia as my crutch. We all do, don't we?
We do. Let's have a look at the next player. Wow, there we go. Who wants to start? Who wants to start?
Go on, Manny. You love it. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about Bestie? I mean, the tragic thing is that when it came to the best days of his career, they were arguably at Manchester United. And of course, when he was sacked by Tommy Docherty, it was sort of the beginning of the downward spiral for him. I think when he was sort of at Fulham and then when he was at Bournemouth, you could take a look at those things as bookends of his post Manchester United career, because when he went to Fulham at that time, I don't quite recall if Bobby Moore was in the Fulham team that time. I don't think he was. It might have been somewhat later. I will take a look and confirm that. But obviously, that was a period where he wanted to stay in London because he obviously loved the London nightlife and everything about living in London at the time. And he played some really good football there, which, of course, it wouldn't have really compared to some of his best days at Manchester United. But that period from 1976 to 77 with in the second division at the time, which of course would be the equivalent of the championship today, he had lost a bit of his pace, but he had retained a few of his skills. And of course, people talk about the match against Hereford United when he tackled his own teammate, Rodney Marsh, um, who, of course, was on the Fulham team that day. And in fact, I do stand corrected. Bobby Moore was in the team at the time, and the goal celebrations there were, of course, something to behold. And that obviously reminded people of the promise that Bestie had. And it's just a reminder of what might have been had things not gone so sour at Manchester United. And in that one season alone, it was 8 goals in 42 games, which wasn't a bad return by any means. But when you consider the clubs that he was playing at in between, the Jewish Guild, Stockport County, Cork Celtic, and the Aztecs in Los Angeles, coming back to Fulham was what he needed. And it was just a shame that it couldn't really continue for any longer than it did, because I think that was when he really enjoyed himself. And then he went back to the US with the Aztecs and the Strikers of Fort Lauderdale. Had a spell in Scotland with Hibernian, then went back to the US with the San Jose Earthquakes. And then it was at Bournemouth where he ended his career in England, only playing 5 games. I call that a bookend because, of course, if memory serves me right, he didn't make the Northern Irish squad in 1982 with Billy Bingham, deciding that his skills were sort of in decline, and he just wasn't able to produce. His football skills have been dulled by the age and the drink, and it was 5 years, of course, since his last cap. And of course, Bestie also wrote in his autobiography that maybe it was a good thing that he wasn't a part of the squad, because the media attention would have been a little bit too much for the squad to bear, wouldn't have been worthwhile. And even he said he didn't want to be a part of that World Cup squad if the team wouldn't have a chance to win it. I think that's sour grapes. I mean, you put into perspective the fact that Pat Jennings, who made his debut for Northern Ireland alongside Bestie, was able to play in both the 82 and 86 World Cup, so that puts it into perspective. But I think if we take a look at when he played at Bournemouth, obviously he was signed by Don Megson for that third division side. And then at the end of the season, he retired from football there, only playing a few, matches for some nondescript teams afterwards, a few friendly games as such. And he did, of course, play in Australia as his final professional stint. But from what I remember reading his autobiography, he also did enjoy his time on the southeast coast. And obviously, when he, was in the team, attendances actually did skyrocket because everybody wanted a piece of Bestie at the time. It just, I don't know if I want to take a look and see the final league table. And in fact, if we take a look at where, oh no, this is the first division. I'm looking for the second division. But anyway, I don't seem to remember if Bournemouth, I think Bournemouth did get relegated, but it was a decent time for him. And obviously, it reminded the fans of how he was. Even in the subsequent friendlies that he'd play, you'd see that although he had lost his pace, he still had his skills. So any club which would be fortunate to sign Bestie would get their money's worth in terms of having, an attraction at the club and maybe bringing some more people in to support the team. And that's sort of how that would work in many ways. So, wonderful connection there. And I'm glad you found that out, Matt.
Well, let's have a look at the next player. And you know what? I was hoping you was going to have him on the list. Harry Arter, a player who was exceptional for this football club, signed from Woking for, what was it, 40,000? Something ridiculous, wasn't it? And I'm doing that off the top of my head. I'm not looking at Wikipedia for that.
It was even that much, was it? It was about 4 grand, wasn't it?
you might be right. You might well be right. Um, 4 grand, 4 grand we signed Harry Arter for, and a player, by God, he gave his all for this football club. Um, Blood, sweat, tears. Nobody can forget that that image against Manchester United, and it'll always stick with me for that. Because, of course, I've had a similar sort of situation myself to that, and I can imagine what he was going through at that time, and you know, a lovely man, somebody who's so dedicated to this football club. But I'm just gutted. It's never worked since he's left. It never has worked, has it, since he's left?
What, for him personally?
Yeah, for him personally, it's never worked since he's left. Of course, he went to Cardiff, went to Fulham, of course, our next opponents. It was probably at Fulham where he had the most success. Went signed for Nottingham Forest on a permanent, and let's be fair, Nottingham Forest has been a bad move for him. He's ended up in League One with Charlton Athletic, and of course in the National League with Notts County, where they sent him back. And it's horrible to have this conversation, because I think he was a great player for this football club. Do you agree?
Yeah, he was. And it does make you wonder whether it was the way the player was managed, and the manager got the best out of the player.
Yeah.
Because obviously, he did perform for Bournemouth regular for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Jefferson Lerma come in. Obviously, Harry was loaned out, and the rest is history. But there's a lot of fond memories of Harry. I mean, I remember being at Watford during the
Mm-hmm.
Championship winning season, and he scored an absolute screamer that day.
Yeah.
Didn't score many goals, but when he scored a goal, they were normally pretty decent. Um, so yeah, good servant to the club. Very good servant.
Yes.
Very good servant to the club.
It was. It's just choking, really, because he was such a good player for this football club.
I do feel that he was a little bit of a naughty boy as well. Towards the end, and I think that was one of the reasons why Mr. Howe moved him on.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it's a case of, do you get above your station at some point? But it's such a shame because he was a great player for this football club. And Manny, what memories do you have of Harry Arter? Because let's be fair, he is 33 years old now. Bournemouth, without a doubt, is going to be the pinnacle of his career, leading the team from League One into the Premier League and keeping us there for that long. And wasn't it the second season. He was just outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, I mean, let me just go back to George Best and say that in Division 3, the club finished 14th, so no relegation, so a happy ending. And now back to Harry Arter. I do remember him vaguely from his time at Bournemouth, and obviously he was a key component in the Bournemouth teams that stayed up in the Premier League, obviously. And
Yeah.
yeah, he certainly played his role for Bournemouth over the years, promoting them, getting them promoted all the way from League One to the Championship and then to the Premiership. And I think he is, of course, in international terms, sadly best remembered for his bust up with the then assistant manager Roy Keane. and he also couldn't make the squad for Euro 2016 at the time. I think he was a little bit too inexperienced, maybe. But after that, he tried to sort of establish himself a little bit. And then that bust up with Keane didn't really do him any favors. And with Mick McCarthy coming back into the setup, he said that Arter had to, continue to prove himself. But certainly when he was at Bournemouth, I remember he was certainly a solid, very dependable sort of player and played a very big role in Bournemouth's campaigns. And of course, in that 3-3 draw between, the Cherries and my lot, Arsenal, he certainly had his role to play. And it's really saddening to see how he has declined a little bit. That bit that Matt said there about Arter being a little bit of a naughty boy, perhaps, I think that sort of sums it up because he was famous for his fiery temperament, and I think both of you will remember that his disciplinary record might not have been the best, but there was a point that Howe was saying that his disciplinary record had improved a little bit, but maybe his fitness was not his best friend. And when you're in a situation where you get injured far too many times and see people go above you in the pecking order, and you have to struggle all that more to try to win back a spot. You can only struggle for so long before deciding that maybe it's time to move on and give yourself a change. And it's just a tragedy that things haven't worked out well for him. But I think how much he's kept in such esteem was mentioned that by Matt when both of you came on that wonderful stream we did, and I'm really grateful to both of you for coming on that stream on Warren's Team Talk, where we were discussing an All Ireland 11. You, Matt, came up with the idea of an all Bournemouth Irish team, where you had the likes of Colin Clark and Jerry Payson in, and Harry Arter was also included. So clearly, he hasn't left your hearts, and he'll always have the fond memories of the South Coast. Didn't do too badly at Fulham either. It's just a sad case that just things don't really work that well in your favour. And certainly the move to Forest was, not the best thing for him. And the way he fell out with Chris Hughton was certainly not ideal. But you just sometimes have to accept that things take the course that they're meant to take. But you'll always have the memories, and I guess that's all we can really be grateful for.
Just to touch on what Manny just brought up, Jerry Payton also played for Fulham and Bournemouth. He's not in this because I couldn't find any decent pictures. All right, but Jerry Payton is another player that played for both Bournemouth and Fulham.
There we are. Just quickly on Harry Arter as well. Harry Arter is he was a one manager player. To be honest, Eddie did get the best out of him, even looking back.
Yeah, 100%.
And he had a loan spell, didn't he? Because Eddie signed him. And then Eddie left to go to Burnley. And then where did he go from there? Was it?
He basically, the first season he was with us, he had players like Anton Robinson playing in his position. So I believe, I don't know whether it was Eddie or whether it was Lee Bradbury, but
it was Bradders. I know it was Bradders. I'm sure it was Bradders.
And he went out to Carlisle. And he spent some time at Carlisle. I think he scored maybe a goal or two for Carlisle. And then he came back the following season. Anton Robinson signed for Huddersfield for some money, considering we got him from non-league as well. And Mr. Arter come back and took the number 8 shirt. And he was ever present all the way through to the Premier League era.
But that started under Bradbury, did it? I'm trying to think.
I can't remember who loaned him out, whether it was Eddie Howe or whether it was Bradbury. Depends
I'm just
on what it was, but
leave that with me. I am just doing some. I'm going to do some tapping quickly. But whilst I'm doing the tapping, Oh, here we go. Just before. It was Bradders. It was Bradders that loaned him out. Yeah, Bradders that loaned him out. If Wikipedia is correct, that is. So Bradbury, he fell out of favour with Lee Bradbury. This is something we should have asked Lee Bradbury about. But went to Carlisle United. He did score an extra time equaliser, the first goal of his professional career against Brighton and Hove. But Brighton did win the game 4-3. So, effectively, he scored his first goal, professional goal. You know, of course, he scored 5 for Woking, but for Carlisle United. There's some pub trivia for you. Let's move on. So we've got Emerson Heineman here, a player who, to be honest, I saw a bit of Emerson when he was at the club, and you know, I thought he was a decent enough player.
Well, I thought when we signed him, I think he was pretty much playing a lot of games for Fulham and doing well at Fulham. He was kind of some sort of teenage sort of youngster whiz kid kind of thing. So when we signed him, you know, I think there was a lot of promise, but he just could never, you know, dislodge the likes of Artus and, you know, Gosling was ahead of him. You know, there were so many names ahead of him that he spent most of his time with us out on loan.
Yeah.
That picture of him there was him playing during Warren Cummins' testimonial against AC Milan.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, unfortunately for him, it didn't really work out here. I mean, he had a good spell at Rangers on loan, if I remember rightly. And I think he's back in America now. I think he's with Atalanta, is it?
Well, I've just done a quick search.
He was at Atlanta, but his contract has been terminated, and I'm not too sure what he's going to do with the rest of his career. And more's the pity, because, I mean, he was also capped by the US national team at senior level. Only twice, though, 2 caps between 2014 and 2020, and didn't really make too much there. So he's 26 years old, had a few caps for his country, made some league appearances, but now what does he do with his life? And that's going to be a really big, question mark, because he's still 26 and he should be able to be snapped up by a few other teams. But I just don't know how things have gone so wrong. I think, as Matt has said, it didn't really work out with him with the Cherries. And since then, a few more loan deals, a return to Atlanta, and I think injury has also been, not his fitness has not been his best friend. I remember he was out for 1.5 months with a right quadricep injury, and he's now in a situation where he might be facing a spell on the sidelines, and of course, in the US, the season starts from January and goes till around about, I want to say, October, November, ending before Christmas. So this should be the time when, hopefully, if another club can snap him up and maybe give him a bench role, or maybe a chance for him to try to get back into prominence, it could work. But it's just sad how what's happened to him.
You know, from what I saw of him, I thought he was a decent enough player. I thought, you know, there was some real bright sparks. And like you say, Matt, you know, he was at Fulham before he come to Bournemouth and, you know, did shine there. You know, I believe that he was competing to help Fulham get out of that division at one point. So
he was very highly regarded at Fulham.
He was, yeah. So I can see why we went in for him, but sadly, it's one of those that makes sense on paper but doesn't make sense on grass. Or, you know, it not make sense on grass, but what I mean is that it just doesn't seem to happen. And
you said it perfectly. Makes sense on grass. I like that. You should stick with that.
Yeah, makes sense on paper, but doesn't make sense on grass. Unfortunately, he just didn't. It just didn't take off for him. And then he went to Rangers, went to Hibernian, went to Atlanta on loan, and then joined them. But hopefully, fingers crossed, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him back in the English leagues before long. But I think it'll be some way below. It's going to be League One or below.
Yeah.
But you never know. Players like Steve Cook and Simon Francis and players like that, Mark Pugh, have built themselves up from that level and got themselves into a position where they can play in the Premier League. He might be just somebody who has a late flourish, and this might just be a bump in the road. Hopefully, fingers crossed for him. But let's have a look at the next one. Laurie Dallavale, crikey, that's a blast from the past. A player that, from memory, was decent, but unfortunately, again, didn't really overall have the career that you expected him to be honest.
No. I do have vague memories of him in a Bournemouth shirt, but I think he might have got a goal or two for us. Not many, if any. I think he was kind of a bit part player when he come on loan to us. He was at Liverpool at one point.
Yeah, he's only 31 years old. He's only 31 years old.
He must have only been about 19 when he was on loan with us, surely.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I know we've got him in a Fulham shirt there, but that would have been a youth game because he didn't actually play a game for Fulham. But I remember, from his time here, he come on loan here. He went on loan to Dundee, Exeter, Crewe, then went off to Mulder, St Troyden, and then to Crewe and Zemun, which I'm not sure where Zemun is, but it's a Serbian team.
Yep.
So he's travelled about. But going back to Delavale, he was a player that, did jump out to me as, again, had a lot of talent. But I'll tell you what pick that is, Matt. Because it is a good pick. Because he's only played 102 games in his career. He's retired at 31 years old. Well, he's retired well before 31 years old. He's 31 years old at the moment. He retired in 2017. So he would have been about
25?
25, yep.
24?
Yeah.
Depending on where your birthday lands. But yeah, I mean, he's an interesting name, isn't he? I can never ever say his name. Can you say it again?
Laurie Dallavale. Okay. I think there was some quality behind him. But I just don't understand it. I remember he was very good on FIFA as well. Yeah, he was very, very good on FIFA because I remember FIFA. Was it FIFA 2012? Yeah, FIFA 2012. If you started that, do correct me, guys. I'm not an expert on FIFA, but if you start that game up, if you got it, I think it's for the PS3. I think. But Laurie Dallavale was quality, absolute quality. You play as Bournemouth on there. He was outstanding. Right, let's move away from FIFA because that's not real life. But yeah, I don't think there's really much you can say. Just it was a disappointment, and I wonder why he did just quit football.
He did. If you take a look at his history, he obviously had some burgeoning business interests, including his photography business in Italy. In fact, it's Dalla Valle because he is, of course, of Italian stock. Of course, born and brought up in Finland, but with Italian ancestry. And he's just one of those players, Craig, who had some talent, but I guess as life went on, he sort of realised that maybe life in professional football wasn't really for him, and he clearly um, didn't really want to, you know, go even further. And maybe he had some other interests outside football. So it's his life at the end of the day, and
Mhm.
it might be harsh to. I don't know if you can necessarily call it a wasted talent because it really isn't. It's just a question of a person being given very few opportunities, tried his best, didn't really wasn't able to make the most of what he was given, and sometimes you just accept that in a 10-year career, you can either continue to do what you're doing, or you just start to realize that maybe it isn't worth continuing in this grind and just say, you know what, it's time to pack it in. So um, he's played for um, he's played once for Liverpool in the Europa League. He's played for Fulham also in the Europa League. He's made appearances for other clubs like Bournemouth and Exeter City and so forth, and then has played for some other decent clubs. So I suppose it's not too bad, and he's got a life away from football. So yeah, good luck to him.
Well, that's the name.
Ah,
And there's a couple of names there. Go on, Matt. You carry on.
best of the rest. Now, there was one player that I couldn't find. He had a loan spell with us in 2005. His name was Stephen Green, defender. Come on loan from Fulham. Played a couple of games for Bournemouth, but could I find a picture of him anywhere? Nope. So he's not on there. But these guys, Kieran McInespy, I remember him playing for Bournemouth. Quite a tricky player from what I can remember,
Mhm.
and was held in quite high regard by Fulham. Mark Newsom, the guy in the bottom left-hand corner there.
Yeah.
He was captain of the Bournemouth side when they got promoted as champions in 1987. Roger Brown there. I like that photo. That's sort of like how football used to be, didn't it? Mug of tea and a cigar. Um, you see that these days, and the backroom staff be having a fit. But you know, he's got a few wounds there. Roger Brown, yeah, tough player. I think he had a spell with Bournemouth, sort of early 80s. Kevin Betsy, that's the name that you may
Crikey,
like.
yes.
He's recently been manager of Crawley. I
Yep.
think he was actually doing Jack Wilshere's job at Arsenal. I think he was under 18s manager there. Then he got the job at Crawley. So he left Arsenal, went on to Crawley. But he's another one that's worked for the FA as well in some capacity. And another name that's played for both is John Beck.
Yes.
Don't know much about him because that was before I was even born.
John Beck.
I know he's been a manager. I think
He was manager of Cambridge, wasn't he, for years?
right. That's right. Yeah, Cambridge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I just think didn't he? He played for Cambridge. He left us to go to Cambridge.
I think
That's
you're right. I think you're right because he played for Fulham, then Bournemouth, and then I think he left Bournemouth and went to Cambridge. Yeah, I think you're right there.
yeah. If I'm incorrect, please, one of our older fans tell us if we're incorrect. But yeah, he was definitely at Cambridge as manager, and I think he was quite successful at Cambridge, wasn't he?
Yeah. Very
Yeah,
successful. I think.
yeah,
Hey, I mean, there's some interesting names there amongst that lot.
yeah. I tell you what, having to rack our brains tonight. So I think the last bit really of this show, the bumper show again. We do. I tell you what, we do give you your money's worth on this channel, don't you? So make sure you subscribe, hit that bell. Let us know what you think. Make comments. Do whatever. Let's have a look at our head-to-head against Fulham, and Fulham are a team. To be honest, they've been a bit of a yo-yo side in the past couple of years, but we've played them on quite a few occasions. And to be fair, before we started doing this, I threw up my memories, and I thought that the last win that we had against them was in the 2015 season when we got promoted to Premier League, and I got the score wrong, only by 1 goal, mind you. I thought we beat them 5-0, but we didn't. Matt put me right, but we did beat them as well since then. And this is why being a yo-yo team, it just completely throws you sometimes. But here we go. Let's start off. So there we are. There is some history. So that was our first game against them, 1986.
No. We go way back with Fulham, but
Yeah, I was going to say. But yeah, this is the.
We're going to be here until the next time we play Fulham. I thought we'd cut it at the 80s, but that's actually a picture. That picture there is actually Craven Cottage on the 4th of May, 1987.
Yeah.
And my dad is actually in that crowd somewhere. That is the Bournemouth.
Is he?
Yeah, if you see the bottom flag, the Union Jack has got Bournemouth written on it. That's the Bournemouth end
There
behind
he is.
Craven Cottage. On the day that we were crowned champions.
We are trying to search for Matt's dad.
You won't find him in there, but that season we beat him twice. We beat him at Christmas, and then we beat him the last day of the season quite convincingly. If you look at the 1990s, Mr. Keegan, there towards the end of the 90s, I think he was actually at Dean Court. The last game there drew 1-1. I think he was actually England manager, interim England manager at the time when he come to Dean Court, Fulham. And Fulham were, I think, flying high at the top of the league. We were chasing a playoff spot, which unfortunately, the last game of that season, we played Wrexham, and we could only manage a 0-0 draw, so we missed out on the playoffs. I think might have been by goal difference, if I remember rightly. Something ridiculous like that. Because we had a good squad at that time, Bournemouth did. We had Mark Steen up front with Steve Fletcher, Ian Cox, Eddie Howe at the back. I think that was the season Mark Ovendale was in goal. So Neil Young. I mean, so many names I can chuck out there.
Of course, that was just after Winter Gardens as well, wasn't it, really? And, shows... That was 97 was Winter Gardens.
That was the year after we went to Wembley in the Auto Windscreen Shield. So it's about 2 years after, But, so the 90s, if you look through the 90s, they beat us twice. Other than that, we either beat them or got a share of the points. And I must admit, during the 98-99 season, Fulham were a very, very good side. Very good side.
They were, and that was kind of part of their resurgence to where they once were, because let's be fair, Fulham throughout history, if you go back away, were quite a successful club. Then they had that dip, which was where, they were on their backsides, weren't they? And I guess that there is some sort of resemblance with us in that sense. Okay, yes, they've been a lot more successful than us throughout history, but there is that dip where they were fighting for their lives in the Football League, weren't they, at one point?
Yeah, they were. But I think around the time when Keegan was there, I think they'd had the cash injection from Mr. Al Fayed, I think the guy that owned Harrods.
Yes,
And he was the guy that really, I think, changed their fortunes around in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, with the financial backing. Obviously, he was friends with Michael Jackson, hence the statue.
Yes.
But yeah, that sort of takes us on then to the actually, it was quite a gap that we didn't play Fulham up until 2014 after then.
Yep.
Because obviously we had a bit of a demise. But yeah, that championship season, from what I can remember, I mean, the away game
I remember that.
was absolutely superb.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Cook's goal, if you get a chance to watch it again on YouTube, watch it, because I mean, still to this day, it's one of my favourite goals I've seen. It's just you don't expect your centre back to do that.
That was the game that, you know, stuck in my mind as the last time we beat Fulham. And that says something, that it was that special. It was that special. It was coming into that running, and, you know, how we performed that day. Wow. That was a performance of a team of champions. You know, I know it wasn't as straight sailing as we would have liked. You know, we still won the championship in the end, but you know, that performance was outstanding and one of the highlights of that season. You know, you don't get me wrong. You know, you have the likes of the result against Birmingham, but Fulham were a better side than Birmingham, and I think that result does jump out.
Yeah, it's one of many good results that season.
Yeah, and there is Brett Pittman. I'm still gutted to this day that, you know, with regards to the Premier League, should have had a chance. That's the one gripe maybe that will always have with Eddie, is that Brett should have had that chance.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It would have been nice for him to represent Bournemouth in all four divisions. But yeah, fantastic player.
And I think he would have scored in all four divisions anyway. I think he would have scored in the Premier League.
He's just those players that just knows how to score goals.
It doesn't matter what division he's in. You know, he would have scored in the Premier League.
I think he's on something ridiculous at the minute, isn't he? 45 plus for AFC Portchester.
Yeah, it's a bit. I think it's a standard well below where he really could be.
Yeah, massively. But
I think really,
he's the Haaland of the Wessex League now, isn't he?
yes, yeah. If I was Bradders, I would be giving Brett Pittman a call and saying, Brett, come to Eastleigh, try and push us over the line, because they've got a real good chance of getting out of the National League this season. Yes, okay, Wrexham and Notts County are fighting for promotion to the Football League, automatic promotion, but the playoffs, anything can happen, and it's a one-off game against either of those. Then you never know. Eastleigh might get out of it. You know, I guess it would be harsh on either Wrexham or Notts County, but that's football. That's football. And, you know, if I was Bradders, I'd be giving him a call because he can do a job.
100%.
There we are. So if Lee Bradbury signs Brett Pittman, there we are. It comes from here first. But let's go into the Premier League. And, of course, that 3-0 win against Fulham in 2018. Not as many Premier League games against Fulham as you'd expect, really, considering a yo-yo team. But what are your memories of that 3-0? And then, of course, we got beat 1-0 at home.
The 3-0, I do remember being at that one. And yes, because I remember that day.
Mm-hmm.
I remember for some reason Brooksy stood out for me that day. Always a good place to go, Craven Cottage. I've always liked going to stadiums that have got character, and that's a stadium that has got, you know, like Goodison Park.
It has.
Villa Park, you know, stadiums that, you know, these old-fashioned stadiums, you know, do have some character, even though they've modernised it, and they've modernised it quite a lot now, haven't they, with that new stand?
What's funny about Craven Cottage is that the away fans and the home fans are in that stand together, and there's never any problems at all. But when I went up there earlier on in the season with Floyd, you know, I thought initially, and it was the first time I'd ever been to Craven Cottage, I thought I'd actually walked into the Fulham end.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, are we meant to be here? And it's because it is and to be honest, Floyd thought the same, and it's because it's a merged one, but a good group of fans, they have modernised it, but that stand, it bloody wobbles. When everybody was jumping, and after that first goal for Bournemouth, you could feel that stand bouncing about. And I tell you what, that's some feeling. That's some feeling when that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree with you. An amazing ground with lots of tradition, and yeah, a great victory. I remember actually thinking about it. Brooks did have a stormer that day, didn't he?
Yeah. From what I can remember, he's sticking in my mind from that day. But
I remember I was at that home game though as well against Fulham, and on the role reversal, even though I wasn't at the away game, the home game, which I was at, I can't really remember much about because, to be fair, it was a bit disappointing, really.
Yeah, I got a funny feeling they were fighting for their lives at the time, weren't they?
Yeah, and Fulham are one of those sides that, if they're fighting for their lives, they do pull off some surprises. During our preview, we actually spoke about their great escape. That's quite remarkable, actually. They were actually relegated. I think it was 2007, 2008. They were relegated at half time against Manchester City. And they had about 4 games to go after that. And they survived. They stayed up.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on the preview show. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. And then, of course, let's go back to last season. 2 draws. What were your memories of those 2 draws? One of the memories that I had was of Cook just diving in front of that ball. That was, especially, believe it or not, and the date for that was, am I right in thinking that was December?
Yeah, 3rd December that was.
3rd December 2021. I had recently done that interview with Steve Cook, and some people picked up on that interview that Steve Cook wasn't too sure about staying, whether or not he would be staying at the club. And he said something that I didn't pick up at the time, and it was about the celebrations in 2015. And he said, I don't know if I'll see it again. And somebody picked up on that. And I think he knew he was leaving the club at that point, but he still threw himself in front of that ball. That gained us that point.
Yeah, that was some heroic defending that night, and that just shows the character that Cookie is. Fantastic display that night. Defensively, I actually quite enjoyed seeing Cahill and Cook play together, to be honest.
Yeah.
Night. But yeah, it was two of the top sides, and the points were shared in both games. So it was Mitrovic, obviously, what season he had. The goal by Solanke.
Yeah.
That move was timed to perfection, similar to the one or slightly different, but similar to like what we did at Arsenal recently. But yeah, it was the 2 best sides of the Championship last season.
Of course, Fulham always, from the past couple of seasons, it's always early goals or late goals. So, of course, there was that really early goal. It was just after half time, wasn't it? if I'm right in
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
Yeah, just after half time. And then, of course, in the reverse fixture, it was we were 1-0 down for a long period of time, and Solanke scored to make it 1-1 right at the death. And then, of course, this season, um, there's some great play. Actually, Jack from Fulhamish actually turned around and said that was some exceptional play. Philip Billing is one player that he really would like Fulham to have signed when they were linked to him at one point. That piece of play, and again, that was within 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Right, yeah.
early goal on Saturday, please, but hopefully a second early goal as well after that. Let's have a look. And of course, the one that I was just discussing. I was there, and a lot of people turn around, and a lot of fans have signalled games that we haven't particularly played, or games that we've been pegged at back in. And one of those games was, of course, Fulham, away when it was 2-0. And to be honest with you, I don't think you can put that in the category of Spurs Leeds, because I thought Fulham played well. I think Willian turned that game around. I think Mitrovic was very, very good. So, what did you make of that, Matt? What did you make of that Fulham game earlier on in the season? Because I thought Fulham were good. I thought we were just a bit better, but a bit unlucky.
Yeah, I felt we were unlucky, but you go away from home, a draw's not a bad result, but when you sat there watching it, it you kind of felt that you deserved to win that day.
Hmm. Was
But
it a penalty?
one of them, innit?
I straight away said no. I stand by that. I stand by that. I don't think it was a penalty, but it was given,
I mean,
and
it's something to build on now, innit? I mean, we've played well against them the last sort of 3 times we've played, and it's now looking forward to Saturday, and obviously the boss not being on the touchline would be some disruption. Mitrovic won't be a handful up front, and obviously they won't have Willian either. So I'm not saying that that's going to mean we're going to roll them over, because that's not necessarily so. But it is nice to not see those names on their team sheet on Saturday. And it's all about going out there, getting behind the boys as we will be, and cheering them on to hopefully 3 very, very valuable points.
we've got 11 games left, and I think this game jumps out to me as a game which is now, where you thought maybe Fulham have had a fantastic season. I think this is a game where you want to get those 3 points on the board. A game which has become very, very winnable. Of course, we got Brighton midweek after this on the 4th. If we get 6 points from these two, that will put us in a very, very healthy position. That will move us up to 30 points. Of course, there's other teams around us playing, and personally, I think we'd probably be halfway there with, of course, that cluster of games coming up in the middle of this month, in the middle of April, I should say. This is going to be a vital, vital time for the club, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. Obviously, it's is so tight, isn't it? And everyone's beating everybody, and people are picking up points when you don't expect them to pick up points. And like I said, and I've said to you, you know, on numerous occasions that I still think that those 3 games of which ones is it? Leeds, Southampton, and West Ham. Those 3 games that are around each other, I do personally think that will, and I still say it now, I think that will define our season. I think we're going to need at least 7 points from those games around that time to really have a chance of staying up. I just think that part of the season is going to be so important for us. Obviously, we don't want it to go down to the wire, but with the way the games are going and the way people are picking up results, you can't be surprised if it gets to the last couple of games of the season and there's still something to play for.
Just looking at what we could find, I think these 2 games, I think Fulham is a very winnable game, and I actually fancy us to get a result against Fulham. If that's going to lead into a result against Brighton, I'm not so sure. But of course, Brighton are going to be in the same boat as us, and going into that game where they'll have played on a Saturday and then on the Tuesday. I think that if we pick up 6 points from these 2, I think we'll be halfway there. I think 36 will do it. I think one team is going to be, or maybe even a couple of teams will be left behind. All we need to do is make sure that's not us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And personally, it's so difficult to call. Crystal Palace might be top of this cluster of teams, but they're the side in the worst form out of everybody. Your Southampton, have been struggling all season. Everton, I think Everton will get found out. Leeds, I think, will struggle towards the end. They've not got particularly good running, so it's going to be interesting. But fingers crossed we can get 3 points against Fulham on Saturday. And of course, we will be doing our free-for-all after that game as well. So please hit that like, hit that subscribe. Make sure you keep all eyes on us on social media, because what we'll be doing is putting that out as well. But I think we need to probably wrap it up there. So Manny, as per normal, thank you so much for being with us, and I'm sure you'll be with us next week. Of course, we'll be finding out. Well, we'll be discussing both Fulham and Brighton at that point.
Yeah, I'll look to definitely be a part of that. And Fulham should be a winnable game because their form's not been the best. Conceded 6 goals in their last 2 games. Right for the picking. And you can thank Brentford and my lot Arsenal for softening them up for you.
Excellent. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. A couple of red cards against Man United as well. Carl will be happy. And of course, Mr. Matthew Harrison. I'm sure you'll be back next week anyway. I'll see you at the game, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we are celebrating going mental there at the back of the stand.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to pop off now and have a little read of a book.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
I've read that one before. I think something a bit like that's a bit more like my taste.
Champagne Cherries. Yes. We need to discuss these books in a little bit more detail. But yeah, I know you.
Bestie loved his champagne too, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. But again,
I've never done it.
George Bear's Champagne Cherries. But until the next show, please do hit the like, the subscribe, the bell button. But until the next one, up the Cherries. Let's hope for 3 points against Fulham, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for joining us.